where economic growth is as elusive as a sunny day in Glasgow. Speaking third, we have the Pakistani Minister of Planning, Development and Reforms, Mr. Ahsan Iqbal. Now, I'm not at all surprised to see Mr. Ahsan Iqbal speaking on that side, attacking liberal democracy. After all, Mr. Iqbal's party launched the greatest attack on liberal democracy in Pakistani history by working with the military to rig elections and form a government despite having only won 17 out of 272 seats fairly. And finally, speaking fourth and side proposition, we shall have Professor Stefan Durkin, whom we are indeed fortunate to be hearing from, with his work on development economics having shaped the global discourse on development in light of the political economy. Mr. President, these are your speakers, and they are most welcome this evening. My argument tonight will consist of three core tenets. Firstly, that elite internal groups within Global South countries have sought to repress liberal democracy to maintain their grip on power, leading to poor economic outcomes which cannot be blamed on liberal democracy. Secondly, that we must consider the role of foreign superpowers, such as the United States, in interfering with the functioning of democracies to achieve their strategic objectives, at the cost of both security and economic prosperity. Finally, I will prove that by balancing the interests of internal elite power groups with broader economic development goals, whilst insulating itself from external control through an independent foreign policy, nations such as India have made a remarkable level of progress in improving economic outcomes, whilst engaging in democratic consolidation that has left its state of democracy significantly better off than regional rivals. So starting with my first point, it is important to establish whether nations such as Pakistan, my country of heritage, adhere to liberal democracy's core tenets. And I shall focus on two: respect of the people's mandate and rule of law. So let's start with respect to the people's mandate. In February 2024, the military establishment in Pakistan sought to eliminate Imran Khan's party from politics, using lawfare to deprive the party of its election symbol, relied on by voters who cannot read. Despite this, the party was on track to secure a 2/3 majority, according to exit polls, following which blatant poll rigging, as evidenced by images of tampered vote count forms, transformed the incumbent government's 17 seats into 75, allowing them to form a government. The consequence of such sham elections has been a surge in political instability, with the incumbent government being viewed as illegitimate. Now, I suspect the proposition will try to argue that Imran Khan's party epitomizes exactly what is wrong with liberal democracy, that it encourages instability and protest in the Global South. But I want you to remember this example, that the root of this instability is not liberal democracy, but it is a concerted effort to impede the mandate of 250 million people by a powerful elite. And Pakistan isn't unique in such an experience. You mentioned Egypt. Military dictator Sisi in Egypt, who has jailed and killed hundreds of dissenting civilians and political opposition after uprooting democracy over 10 years ago, has destroyed the Egyptian economy, despite receiving billions of dollars from allies. Moving on to rule of law, a fundamental pillar of liberal democracy, as I'm sure we can all agree. Pakistan's history is rife with political imprisonments, and indeed Mr. Ahsan Iqbal's own party has regrettably suffered the consequences of being on the wrong side of Pakistan's military establishment. But since his ouster from office in 2022, Imran Khan has faced over 200 frivolous cases, ranging from terrorism, murder, and the legitimacy of his own marriage. Over the last year, both the United Nations and Amnesty International have called for Imran Khan's release, citing the sham cases leveled against him, the complete absence of due process with a lack of a fair trial, and inhumane prison conditions. Given this, I hope that Mr. Iqbal's government will give due respect to democratic values and release Imran Khan from illegal incarceration. So what can we conclude from this case? Since 2022, Pakistan has experienced a four-fold increase in net migration, and over 13 million people have fallen below the poverty line, demonstrating that it is not liberal democracy, but the erosion of it that has contributed to the nation's economic woes. Moving on to my second point, that repeated interventions of both a political and military nature from foreign superpowers against popular leaders has compromised the ability for liberal democracies to develop. And it is on this basis that I reject the notion that liberal democracy has failed the global south. Rather, it has been deliberately obstructed from taking root.